Welcome to the Midland Money Mindset. This is a podcast that's all about getting your mind right when it comes to all things money. In every episode, we go deep with engaging guests who provide tangible takeaways and a whole lot of joy along the way. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I enjoyed having them. Let's dive into today's show. Well, I have the pleasure today of being with Paul Osincup, speaker, corporate trainer, and humor strategist. So welcome to the show, Paul.
Hey, so glad to be here. I'm excited to talk with you and I don't know, hopefully share a little humor and levity today.
Hey, listen, in today's world, we cannot lack for humor. That's for sure,
Right.
with everything going on out there. So thank you. But before we jump into what you're doing today, can you share a little bit for our listeners to give them a little understanding of who you are, how you got to here, got to this point in terms of, what your life and your entrepreneurial journey has been?
Yeah. Something that sums up pretty well who I am and kind of ties into this. When I was in sixth grade, I was just all about sports and I was like a class clown. And I just didn't care about really much at all other than just having fun and doing my thing. And I was just kind of a dirty, scrappy little kid. And then I got some dumb idea that I was going to run for student council president in sixth grade. And I knew I wasn't going to win because the most popular girl in school, Chanel, was going to win. But I did a rap in front of the whole school and everyone liked it. And somehow I won as student council president. And something clicked in my mind. Apparently I went home and I told my mom that day, Mom, I think I'm going to need you to buy me a suit. And I wouldn't lay off until I got, because there was something that clicked in my mind that I was like, you know what? I'm in a leadership position now and I'm going to need to be taken seriously. And people aren't going to think I'm going to do a good job if I just look like a scrub all the time. So as early as that, I had this like two sides of my life of wanting to be taken really seriously and do a great job at things and achieve great things, but also wanting to be myself and have fun and goof around and that kind of stuff. And that's all the way through my professional career. I worked as an associate dean of student affairs in colleges and universities, working with students with severe mental health and drug and alcohol issues. But on the side, I'm doing stand-up and improv comedy. And one thing led to another. And I started noticing how much humor impacts our day-to-day lives, both at home, at work, with these students I was working with my team. And I just started to kind of nerd out about it and research it and started to give presentations on the impact of humor and the things it does for us. And that's kind of led to what I do now.
Wow. Amazing. So it's all basically congratulations to your sixth grade self. That's kind of set you off on this journey you're on today.
I wish I could remember that rap because it must have been something pretty bad. Like I must have been, I don't know how good of judges of either politics or white rappers, sixth graders are, but they had a keen eye back then. So.
Well, they were willing to put you in a leadership role for it. Right. So you must have done something right. You definitely hit a chord with them for sure.
Yeah.
So, you call yourself a humor strategist, which is something that I've never heard that terminology before. And I'm sure many of our listeners, which, are a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, et cetera, probably haven't either. So what does that really mean? What do you really do? And how do you help businesses, by doing this?
Yeah. Well, if I'm being honest, I think it was a more marketable term than humor nerd, which is essentially how
nerds rule the world, though.
That's right. That's right. But ultimately, what I do is, I study the impacts of humor on our in business, at work, on relationships, productivity, and I also have a background in comedy, so I kind of combine both the neuroscience and positive psychology research with actual ways to use humor. That, I look at humor as this really this resilience and productivity tool that is built into the human psyche that we just don't use enough, and it can be developed. And so as a humor strategist, I share with people ways that you can actually develop and use your sense of humor strategically to decrease stress, enhance performance, build relationships, that kind of thing.
Can you perhaps maybe share like a real life example of somebody that you've worked with and you've helped them through that process? Or, just maybe not the whole thing because it might be very involved, but like one example that you've been able to open their eyes to show them how humor could be helpful and how it ultimately ended up helping them?
Yeah. So, I'll do speaking events, workshops, things like that. And in one workshop, we were talking about the concept of taking your pain and playing with it. And one strategy is something I call the what I could have said game, right? Like looking back at stressful situations. And specifically, I talk about where I was being negative or acting dramatic and letting the stress of my day get to me. And there was this one manager who recalled a lunch meeting that her and her colleagues were supposed to have. And an email went out to everyone saying, with a new location for the lunch meeting. And it went out to everyone but her. So she ended up having lunch by herself
Oh
across
boy.
town while the rest of the team had a fun lunch together. And she kind of let that fester, and her brain like held it as a grievance. Even though she knew it was an accident, everybody was very apologetic, and she came back to work and kind of gave her colleagues the silent treatment and let it affect the rest of her day. And so in looking back at, okay, how could you have handled that with levity or humor to be able to let it go and not carry that around with you? So she came up with in doing this, coming back to the office and going, "Hey, thank you. That was the first hour I've had to myself in 20 years." Or, "Well, it sure made splitting the checks a lot easier." Um, so, but there's a lot of research that shows humorous reappraisal, like looking back at stressful, even up to traumatic moments in our lives, and reappraising them, not just positively, but reappraising them using humor, can actually lead to a huge increase in positive emotions and decrease in negative emotions that helps us then move on and be more resilient to those annoying things throughout our days.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of reframing things and, not, I guess, sweating the small stuff because it wasn't really that big of a deal. I mean, obviously it was a mistake, but in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't like a terminal medical diagnosis or something super, super
Exactly.
serious, right?
Yeah, and I think the trick
Yeah.
is to start with those small annoyances as you're doing this type of stuff. Start with the small everyday things, and ultimately you're training your brain to start seeing the humor in these moments, so that as things get tougher and tougher, you'll even be able to mine bigger struggles for nuggets of humor.
Yeah. You brought up something about your stand up, right? And
Yeah.
I've heard from folks who've kind of explored the stand up route, business person first, interested in comedy,
Yeah.
explored the stand up. I've heard that there's a lot of benefits from going down that route in terms of helping your business presentation skills and your delivery within a business meeting. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I've, anecdotally just heard through folks that I know in the business community who've gone down that route. They've really said it's been super helpful to their ability to connect with people and entertain, et cetera, in a business environment as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's first of all, stand up is all very prepared, right? You're writing jokes ahead of time, you're preparing, and then you're workshopping it. So anyone who has to give a presentation, um, there's a fine balance between trying to be in the moment and go with the audience, but also being very prepared. You want to prepare, have the key points of what you're talking about pretty well prepared. And then if you're using stories, say to highlight particular points in a presentation, there are definite comedy tricks and tactics to use to get more bang for your buck in those stories. That like very simple things like, for example, the comic triple. So like you list three things. The first two are serious or obvious, and the third is surprising, funny, or different. I use that in my bio for on LinkedIn and speaking gigs and stuff. It's like Paul's work has been highlighted in the New York Times, Forbes, and on his mom's refrigerator. It's just something
Right.
like it's just a little thing that keeps people's interest. And that is a formula anyone in business can use. You see it in marketing all the time. And so there are all these little techniques from the world of comedy that can absolutely be used in leadership, business, presentations, all that kind of stuff.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, leading with laughter is something you speak a lot about, right? Why do you feel that that is so critical?
Well, being in a leadership role means a heavier burden, more responsibility, and probably then more stress. And so, for one, I think being able to lead with a sense of levity and laughter for one's own good, to be able to alleviate some of the stress and burden by not taking ourselves too seriously. But then there's other gains too. Leaders who use their sense of humor and show their sense of humor at work more often, their teams are actually more productive, more engaged. They are seen as more competent and credible by their employees as well. So it also has those benefits. But to me, the more human case for it is we spend a third of our lives at work, and
Right.
as I was saying before, like our sense of humor is a really big part of who we are as people. It's part of our identity. That like goofy, silly person who you are around your siblings or your best friends or your family. You said you just got back from a family trip, and when we kind of let
Hmm.
loose a little bit, that part of our identity is crucial to who we are. And while we can't show all of that goofiness at work, leaving that completely away from the workplace, to deprive ourselves of humor for a third of our lives is to crush the human spirit, in my opinion. And people talk about bringing,
Right.
authenticity in leadership. Well, unless you're a total sociopath, your sense of humor is part of your authenticity as well. So,
Yeah. Is there a way to determine what the line is, right? Because, typically we want to, project a certain, image, certain level of respect, what have you, whatever you want to kind of whatever tag you want to put on that, right? So, is there a way to determine what that line is that, you don't want to be as you refer to yourself in your sixth grade self as the jack of all jokes, right?
right,
You don't
right.
necessarily want to be necessarily that far on the humor side, but how do you balance that? Is there a guiding principle that you could kind of follow?
Yeah, yeah. So in my upcoming book, I've got a whole chapter on this because it's really important. I mean, the balance between, um, being credible versus comical, right? And
Hmm.
there is a lot that goes into that. And ultimately, there's the Bell Leadership Institute has some great research when they ask people, um, what are the two what are the characteristics of the greatest leaders you've ever worked for? And the two things that were mentioned twice as much as any other were work ethic and sense of humor. And so we want to
Interesting.
work for people who get their stuff done and are reliable and are there when we need us and can guide the ship, but that also don't take themselves too serious. Um, one, one thing that I say is the work ethic, the reliable, to me always comes first. You can't prioritize punchlines over deadlines. Nobody, nobody wants to, see the guy who never returns emails or phone calls at every Taco Tuesday night or team trivia. It's like goofing around. It's like, hey, you haven't responded to that email I sent 3 weeks ago. Like maybe you shouldn't be doing this right now. So I think prioritizing that reliability first. That way, when you're someone that people can count on, then your jokes and your fun and levity is seen as a welcome reprieve, And then the other thing that
Hmm.
I outline there is about how starting with yourself, humor about you and your own experience and yourself is always the safest place to start. And then shared experiences among you and your team. And you really run the most risk, and it takes the most skill and practice to be creating humor or using humor about other people, their experiences, things outside of your general worldview. So,
Right. So let's talk about that for a moment. Why, you talk about it, and I think you just mentioned it just a moment ago. Why do you think it is so important not to take yourself too seriously? Right. Because you have to add that in there. So how, why is it so important that you not take yourself too seriously?
well, I think when we get too wrapped up inside with, how crucial every moment, particularly in our adult lives, is, it just adds to that level of stress and burnout. And Bronnie Ware, who's a palliative care nurse, wrote a book called "The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying," and interviewing people in their last couple of weeks of life. And one common thing from people who were facing their last couple of weeks of life, they said that, I wish that I had let myself be happier. And there was this constant refrain from those folks that, looking back, they realized that so much about their own well-being and happiness was within their control, and a choice. And so we do have the power to rewire our brain to still achieve great things and succeed at what we do, but also balance the perspective of, I don't have to take every moment of every day so serious. And, there's no point in living your life as an actor in a drama just to reach the end to find out, I was the director and it could have been a comedy this whole time.
Right.
And so I think to me, it's really about our well-being, and providing a little bit of that balance between achievement and fun and levity and enjoying life.
Sure, sure. I see happiness as a almost like an unattainable goal. It's something we strive for, but maybe necessarily not ever reach. We talk a lot about joy along the way.
Hmm.
Finding the joy is something that can be attained, right? You can
Yeah.
definitely earmark certain events in your life, and hopefully, if you string enough joyous moments together, you can strive to get closer to that happiness, right? Which I think is your point right there.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Because I look at the way I look at happiness and joy is like the difference between uh, weather and climate. Like, the climate
mhm,
of Southern California, for the most part, is like pretty sunny and warm, but that's measured over long term. But the weather on any given day could be cold and rainy, and so the I look at happiness. The reason it's so hard for people to think about, am I happy or whatever, is it's an overall in my life. Looking at the
right.
totality, am I happy with things? But like you said, joy are those little moments of weather that make up the climate over time. So the more times that, when I come home from work and my dogs are waiting at the top of the stairs, I can be in my mind going, okay, I gotta, I gotta get some groceries out and start making dinner. And,
Mm,
oh man, I forgot to mow the lawn and I got to get that done. And I can walk past and kind of pat my dog on the head, but be in that mindset. Or I can take that 30 seconds and kneel down and just let those dogs jump all over me, and, take that moment of joy and go, oh, I love coming home to these guys. And those little moments add up to an overall climate of happiness.
yeah, that's a great analogy. Thank you for sharing that. So laughter benefits, right? What are are there empirical benefits to laughter, and can you share what some of those might be?
Yeah, both humor and laughter. I mean, there's a lot of physiological things. So, like, when we find something amusing and when we laugh, our brain gets all sorts of great receptors, like a happiness cocktail floods our brain. We get like a dose of happiness. And by dose, you can literally think DOSE, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins flood our brains when we find something amusing, when we laugh. Um, And so that's great. Also, cortisol, stress hormone, decreases as well. So, for example, a little productivity hack, like people who take a break at work, you take a 15-minute break, they increase their productivity after that break. People who take a break and watch funny videos that make them laugh during that 15-minute break, upon returning to work, they're twice as productive as those who took a break with no humor. So
Wow.
it floods your brain with these chemicals necessary to kind of, I look at it as a psychological reset. But there are a lot of other benefits as well. I mean, people with a humor habit who have a habit of um, coping with negative life stressors using humor are more optimistic and positive. They have a greater sense of resilience in the face of future adversities. So there's a lot of benefits.
Wow. So there is a place in the world for those silly TikTok videos is what I'm hearing.
That's right, man.
It's after
Yeah.
when you're taking that 15-minute break, you should watch 1 or 2 of those and come back refreshed and ready to go, I guess.
Exactly. I always tell people, you could set an alarm for like a little 15-minute funny at work. But if you're like me, you need to set 2 alarms. You need to set the alarm on the back end to get your butt back to work, because I can get
Oh,
down.
yeah.
Next thing I know, it's been, it's like TikTok o'clock. And it's like, okay, I need to
Death
get,
scroll.
yeah, exactly. Get back on track. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Another fun one that I think in terms of like TikTok and watching videos and stuff, um, I call a comedy chaser. So like, thinking about your screen time and what you're consuming, we're all still going to consume serious media, the news,
Mhm.
uh, true crime documentaries, whatever, those things that we all love. But looking at whatever the last screen time you have of the day is, or maybe the last screen time before work, or an important thing, make it humor, make it funny. So you're replacing
Yeah.
those stress inducing hormones with stress reducing. So you go to bed or get to work or whatever and kind of cleanse the palate with a few laughs rather than going to bed after watching 2 hours of serial killer documentaries.
Yeah, very, very good. I like that. Very good actionable takeaway there. So let's shift for a moment to your book, The Human Habit. What was the purpose
The
behind it?
humor
Why
hat,
did you write it?
the humor
The
habit,
humor habit.
the humor
I'm
habit.
sorry,
Yeah.
humor habit.
But it is human.
Humor habit.
Yeah. Uh, they haven't taught AI bots really to use humor too well yet. So right at this point, our sense of humor is what is going to separate us from the robots, I think, in the future.
And what was the impetus behind writing the book, The Humor Habit? What was the impetus, and what do you want people to take away from it?
Yeah, I mean, really, for me, it's after more than a decade now of researching the power of humor, and then applying it in my own life, as well as using humor to entertain people in comedy clubs and in speaking events. Um, I've just realized the immense power that our sense of humors have, and I learned all of these ways to apply it and apply both principles of comedy along with research from positive psychology and neuroscience. And I thought I could combine these two things. For me, the big purpose of the book is that there's a lot written about how good humor is for us, but no one ever tells us how to do it. How do I develop my sense of humor? When do I start to laugh things off? Like when I lock the keys of my rental car in the trunk before I'm supposed to return it to the airport, like, oh, I'm silly. No, I'm freaking out. Right. But there are ways we
Yeah.
can rewire our brain to see the humor in life closer to real time. And so I wanted to put those somewhere where people have access to it and help people do it. So,
Great, right. Are there a couple of things just to give people kind of a precursor or a preview to the book, right? Are there a couple of things that we could give our listeners today that they could, utilize, implement almost immediately to start helping them develop that muscle and utilize it in a productive way?
yeah, I think one of the first things for me is um, learning to train your brain to see humor more often. And so in the book, I kind of go with like, first, get rid of some chronic seriousness, try to clear your brain of some of the chronic seriousness we all have, strategies to do that. Then it's like learning to see humor. Then it's playing with humor and creating humor from your life. But the really important part is to be able to see the humor in life more often. And so I think one way to start training your brain to do that is it's a 1 week challenge. So for the next 7 days, throughout the day, write down 3 things you found funny or amusing that day. And maybe they make you laugh out loud. Maybe they're just things that make you think, oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty funny. And write those down. What researchers have found is that people who did this just for 1 week increased their overall happiness and decreased depressive symptoms for up to 6 months. And plus, it's
Wow.
training you to look for the funny things throughout your day, because ultimately you'll find that something throughout your day will happen that would normally annoy you or maybe even anger
Hmm.
you. And you'll think, huh, I'll be writing this down later. And that's when you know, even though you're not laughing yet, your brain has made a connection
Right.
like, hey, don't freak out. There might actually be humor in this situation, taking that freak out maybe from like a 9 to a 7, giving you just amount of perspective to go, there might be humor in this. You write that down, you revisit it later and go, oh yeah, there is some humor in that. And then, the next step is to then take those and go, how can I find humor in it? What's funny about this?
Hmm. I think those are great takeaways, and I think everybody listening could take that 7-day challenge. So, Paul and I challenge you to take that challenge, and
That's right.
also take a look and read the book, The Humor Habit, and learn more of these techniques to add more humor to your life and situation. I've heard you say life is too important to be taken seriously. Can you share what you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's an Oscar Wilde quote. So, don't, I'm like, not near as smart as some of these people that come up with these brilliant quotes, but, yeah, I just think ultimately kind of going back to that thought, as we were talking about how so much of our overall well-being and happiness is a choice, and that when
Hmm.
we look at our life in totality and take kind of the 1,000-foot view, um, what we achieve, the hours we work, the people we impact with our work, that is important. But all of the little moments in life in between there, the daily things, that is also very important. And life is hard and sad and scary and hurtful, but it's also funny. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes uh, we lose sight of how funny and absurd and ridiculous things can be. And so I think it's too important to go through life and not be able to see that stuff.
Right. I agree. There was somebody in college, and they may have stole this too, and I don't remember exactly who said this, but there was a friend of mine through my college years. They used to say, "Life is too serious to be taken seriously. Don't fight it. You'll never make it out alive," or
Yeah.
something along those
Yeah.
lines. And it may have been somebody else who said that, but I remember they very vividly. They used to walk around and say that quite often, and it stuck with me this long, so it must have made an impression back then.
It does help. And,
And
for anyone who has found a little bit of humor in really difficult moments, um, you know, it, you realize that, wow, even when I'm going through a hard time, we can still laugh. And it's not always about laughing at our struggles, but learning to laugh through them. And
mhm,
it can be
yeah.
done, and we can train our brain to do it more easily.
Well, I'll share a story. You mentioned me traveling this past weekend,
Yeah.
and this is actually somewhat humorous. So we wake up in the morning. My wife and I's usually. My wife is very diligent about scheduling everything and making sure everything's set. We get up in the morning. Clock hits 8 a.m. We realize that the car that's supposed to be picking us up isn't there. She rechecks the confirmation. She booked it for the wrong day.
Uh,
Instead of Wednesday, she booked it for Friday. So instead of freaking out, go online. We go to one of the car services. We luckily there was somebody within our area comes picks us up, takes us to the airport, And long story short, as we're going through the security line, we're going to see my younger son do his senior speech. And it was stressful because of the situation. We needed to get to Minnesota. We wanted to see this. We started off on a bad foot,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, we're waiting on the security line. We put our bags through, and there is Bill Murray
Oh,
online.
really?
You know, from yeah, and my brother-in-law and my father-in-law. My brother-in-law is no longer with us. We're huge Caddyshack fans, and my wife and I looked at each other and were like, "Well, this was a sign that things are only getting better from here." So we found humor in that moment with a comedian. So it was
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
I
even
mean, you
more
literally
humorful
found
because of
humor.
it.
I mean, you literally
A
found something
pinnacle, one of
really,
the
yeah,
one of the
exactly. I
greatest,
mean,
right?
that is well,
Yeah.
and what's great about it is you probably would not have run into him if the car that was supposed to take you would have gotten there, right? So it's
That's
sometimes,
exactly what we were saying.
yeah,
There were a series of events that had they went the way they should have went, we would never have seen him, run into him, or talk to him. So
go with
it
the
was
flow in life
it was
because
funny.
sometimes you'll just end up running into Bill Murray.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And Paul, we ask each of our guests the same final question because this is the Midland Money Mindset, and we are all about joy, as we discussed earlier. So, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
All right. Yeah. Two quick things. One is I'm a huge Denver Broncos fan, which has not been very joyous for the last 6 or 7 years, believe me. Um, but one
New
thing
York
that,
football, no better.
yeah, right, right, yeah. But one thing that my wife and I do from time to time, and we did it this morning, is on the Monday after a game in the morning, we'll sip coffee before getting out of, like getting up for the day, and we'll watch like the locker room videos of the players being interviewed. And it was like a good, 10 or 15 minutes just sipping coffee with my wife, watching Denver Bronco videos. And I was just thinking, man, I love having a wife that loves the same stuff that I do and will take a few minutes with me to do this. And it was a lot of fun. And they won. So I was like being very grateful for like, finally my team won. And then also right before this podcast, I took my dog outside to play in the snow, both just for a little energy reset for me and also to up the chances that he didn't interrupt me during this, this podcast. So
There you go.
yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. Paul, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about you, want to connect with you, want to get the humor habit, and what's the easiest and the best place for them to find out that information?
Easiest thing is either just go to my website, paulosincup.com. It's OSINCUP. Or just follow me on any social platform at Paul Osincup. And, trust me, I will be cramming the humor habit book down everyone's throats for the next 6 months, so you won't miss it.
All right. Well, great. We look forward to it. I look forward to it. And I appreciate you taking out time and sharing your story and sharing a little humor and how our listeners can find humor in their situation and enrich their lives. So thank you for that and enjoy the day.
Yeah, you got it. You too. Thanks for having me on, Larry. I appreciate it.